Oh yeah, that's fine. I'll pause this and then we'll be ready. Monty, were you able to share okay?
I mentioned, this is a public meeting. We're welcome to everybody. I'm Dr. Monty McInturf. I'm the chair of our group. I'd like for us to go around the horn real quick and kind of announce who we are. We have got a nice group here in person here in Knoxville, Tennessee, at the campus of UT Animal Science Building here at UT, which is awesome. So let's have this room go first. So go ahead.
Steve Adair, UT faculty.
John Elder, lawyer at Payne, Tarwater, and Bickers here in Knoxville.
Jenny Ivy, a faculty member in animal science in UT Knoxville.
And we've got Dr. Samantha Beatty, our state veterinarian. She's also here. She stepped out for a second. I don't know if it was a restroom break or what, but she's also present. Let's go around the Zoom room real quick. Someone just take off here.
Matt Smith, coming to you from Nashville. Good morning.
Matt Horseman in Franklin.
Julie Giles, I'm with the Farm Animal Care Coalition of Tennessee.
Lauren Balthrop with the Tennessee Department of Agriculture here in the state vet's office.
This is Jessica Hyder with the Humane Society of the United States.
Jay Miller, General Counsel, Tennessee Department of Agriculture. Monty, I apologize. Are you taking roll of the members right now, or are you just getting an accounting of who all is present at the meeting?
Well, we know who the members are, so I think we're just taking a roll of who's present in the meeting. But whatever the council recommends, what do you?
Okay. Well, you'll need an official roll call.
Yeah, it should be members.
To establish your quorum.
Okay.
You probably want to wait until. Oh, never mind. You're looking for, I think, a physical quorum of 5 in one location. Is that what I'm looking at in Knoxville?
Correct.
All 5 are members? Okay.
Yes.
So I would probably just take a roll call of the members. And before you do that, if I could make a few announcements, I don't mean to impose on the commission, but would like to cover a few things if I may.
Sure.
Number one, I wanted to make a quick announcement for anyone who did not already know. David Waddell was the member of the department's legal team that supported all of our boards and commissions. David retired this past summer after 29 years of service, and we wish him very well in retirement. I wanted to let everyone on the commission know that the role and responsibility of the legal office to support you all is not falling through the cracks. All of those duties are coming to me. I'm going to be your legal support going forward. This commission is administratively attached to the department, so questions about notices, public meetings laws, records requests, that sort of thing, I am here to support in any way that I can. I hope that all members would feel comfortable picking up the phone and calling me if ever I can be of service. So I wanted to let you all know that was happening. Good that we have a physical quorum in one place. I'll skip all of the to-do about what to do when that doesn't happen. But I did want to cover a few things. There are some specific rules since we do have some members participating electronically you all need to be aware of. Number one, all members must be able to hear and speak with each other in real time. So if this meeting comes under technical difficulties for any reason, you will need to resolve those before you continue the meeting. Members participating electronically must also identify any persons that are present with them in the location from where they are participating. So when you call the roll, you probably do that one time. Matt, you would probably say from the looks of things that there's, Matt Horseman, member, I'm the only one present. Okay. If you all are reviewing documents today, all of those documents must have already been circulated with members of the commission before today, meaning we can't just put something new on the screen in one location. All votes today have to be by roll call. There are no voice votes when it is an electronic participated meeting. And for each comment for members participating electronically, it would be good if you would identify yourself verbally before your comment. Matt Horseman, member, I think X. And lastly, Jeannie, I think you've already covered this. This meeting has to be recorded, and it's going to have to be posted on the department's website within 3 days of this business meeting. So if you can email it to me or to Dr. Beatty, we'll get it over to our public affairs group and get it posted. But did want everyone to know that not only are we recording it, but it's required to be posted. It becomes public record for the next 3 years. So that's the quick and dirty on conducting an electronic meeting for public boards and commissions. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take those. Otherwise, I'll step aside, Monty, and let you call the roll.
Any questions for Mr. Miller? Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller, for that, and welcome. So if we can, let's call roll of the members. I'll just state your name. You can say if you're present and where you're present. Dr. Adair?
Present.
Dr. Beatty?
Present.
Dr. Ivy?
Present.
John Elder?
Present.
Matt Smith?
Present and alone.
Matt Horseman?
Present and alone.
Melanie Taylor? And Burchett, Kelly Burchett. She's not present today. Okay, I believe that's everybody.
Monty McIntyre.
Bonnie McIntyre, I'm present, and I'm in Knoxville. So great. So we can get this meeting started. Our first point of business is our minutes from the last meeting. Those were circulated, as Mr. Miller stated. I'm going to try to bring those up really quick, and if I can share my screen, hopefully those minutes will pop up. Hope everybody can see those, and it shows the attendance of last meeting, and it shows our discussion points. We can read through this together, or we can just make comments based on your earlier review, or we can just take a motion to approve the minutes. I think it would be good if we all took a second to process these. It may help our discussion on. Is there anyone that hasn't had a chance to read these? We can take a second to refresh ourselves. Are there any comments about the minutes from last meeting?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Dr. Ivy motions to accept the minutes. Can I get a second?
Matt Horseman, member, second.
Any other comments about the minutes? Discussion? Okay, the minutes, let's take a roll call vote for the minutes. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as written. We'll start. Matt, will you want to do the roll call, buddy? Do you mind? Matt Smith?
I got it. Dr. Adair,
Aye.
John Elder,
Aye.
Dr. McIntyre, Dr. Beatty,
Aye.
Matt Horseman,
Aye.
Dr. Ivy,
Aye.
Matt Smith, member aye. I believe the ayes have it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Well, let's move into today's meeting. I didn't find the actual agenda that we sent out, but I kind of know a little bit about what that is. Just to kind of review that quickly, we're going to get a report from our state veterinarian, Dr. Beatty, on the current status of the health and welfare of the horse. We're also going to get a report from Dr. Ivy on the current status on our economic impact study. I would like, as an additional point, to maybe have each member to kind of give a snapshot of what they're seeing in their industry or their discipline. I mean, it's the equine industry, but all of us have a little bit different view of the horse in our state. And I think it'd be nice for this commission to kind of hear from each member about what they see as current events or current topics. And I wanted to give a brief synopsis of our letter that we wrote to the governor this past year. So let's start with Dr. Beatty, and let's get a update on the health and welfare of the horse in the state of Tennessee. Is that okay, Dr. Beatty?
Yeah. Let me pull up. I have a list of kind of the things that we've been seeing, and let me pull each one specific. So we have seen quite a bit of Potomac horse fever this year at Cord Lab, and I know through a visit with the UT clinicians that they see it quite frequently here. Because it's not a reportable disease, we don't have a total tally of numbers, but it's one of those things that I think we should just anticipate seasonally, and have an awareness around. The state veterinarian of Kentucky, who's a friend of mine who is new to the area, moved here from California, actually asked me not too long ago, like, what's up with all the Potomac horse fever? And I was like, it's just a thing here.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a seasonal thing. So, and then we have seen some, an increase in the numbers of EHV1 that we're seeing in Middle Tennessee. And I have placed a few quarantines. I did implement a restriction on some horses at a sale and sent them home because they've been associated with an EHV1 suspect. And we're seeing the neuropathogenic strain and the respiratory strain, obviously, in different cases. Equine influenza seems to be prevalent as well. And as far as though any other issues with the disease, we haven't seen that much. Livestock welfare continues to be an issue. I don't have a complete breakdown of the numbers this year, but I can pull that before the end of the meeting. I apologize. We've been in the middle of an emergency response, and so I've been putting out fires as they pop up. So, but that's information that I can get. We struggle with finding places to take surrendered or seized animals. Still looking at ways to try to, educate before regulation, but still and concerned that as we go into the winter months, we'll continue to see those numbers kind of tick up, especially in early spring before we get good grass. So, because we're seeing an awful lot of really skinny horses now, and there's nowhere to go but down. So,
Any questions or comments for Dr. Beatty? My first thought is, we've always seen Potomac horse fever around. Tends to be around the river areas and lower areas. Is that kind of what we're seeing now? Is it associated with rivers and creeks?
yeah. And we're just trying to do a lot of public outreach when we get those. If you check the tn.gov website, there's there'll be a posting on our notices page for the state veterinarian, and it'll list, the important things to do around, Potomac horse fever cases, like turning the lights off at night and clean water sources and that sort of thing. So,
And I know the EHV1, it's been picked up on some nasal swabs, but you have seen the neurologic form.
mm-hmm.
How many cases have we seen of that?
I think there have been two.
Two.
They have been actively neurological. They may still have the neuropathogenic form, but because they don't express the gene.
Do we know their source of transmission?
Yeah, that.
Were they at a show or?
No, it's a privately owned herd of a large herd of very well cared for miniature donkeys.
Okay.
And but the gentleman had purchased some miniature horses at a sale to accompany them, and I think he brought in a significant amount of that, so.
Is there anything we can do, this commission do, to help you in helping to get the word out, or the processes that you'd like to see?
You know, I don't know that there may be an opportunity for outreach at some point. I have the discussion with lots of people about the risks of buying animals at sales, because inherently it's like daycare. You commingle and, you know, everybody goes home with something. And so, you know, we encourage people to quarantine their animals for 2 weeks after a sale, just to see if they are going to break with something and that sort of thing. But it's, a lot of people don't realize that risk exists. And so we do look for like diseases that may have a tremendous impact on industry, that may slow commerce. But there's no way to limit all of the animals that come into a barn who look normal that may be shedding something. So that's just
I think you reported on the cattle side that the cattle industry is having some problems with that as well.
Yeah, it's not as, there seems to be more awareness, but as we get, you know, more people who move to suburban areas or rural areas and decide that they would like to get into some sort of small farming operation, they may not be aware that, you know, potentially starting your herd out of commingled environment is, you know, maybe not the best idea. So there's some education and outreach that can be done there. Also in the same line of people not understanding what kind of care goes into adopting a horse or caring for that. It's a new experience and they maybe haven't done all their research, so there's some education.
One of the issues though is just commingling.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a sale, doesn't have to be a show, it can be a vet hospital. You know, anytime you've got, because you can have asymptomatic carriers. So, you know, really, that's the issue. There's not a vaccine and you can have asymptomatic carriers, so.
You're talking about the EHV1.
EHV1.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Every trail ride,
Yeah.
and that's what we try to stress to people, like you just can't, the no risk scenario would be to keep your horses at home all the time,
Yep.
and that doesn't work. That's not the reason we have
So,
them.
I mean,
So.
from a realistic standpoint, there's minimal that can be done, other than just education and, yeah, encourage vaccination, but you know, vaccination's not protective.
Right.
So, you know.
We-
it's-
I know we spoke about some upcoming training ideas for the general public. But if there are other specific things that you see from an education outreach standpoint within your office that we can help to kind of push out, because we're always looking for new current topics that can help the general public and also help our agents. So, you know, aside from just the
Well, the
standard,
other
you know,
thing-
biosecurity, things like that, but
And this isn't related necessarily to EHV1, but, you know, to encourage, individual horse owners to get their vaccinations from veterinarians. And the reason I say that is the vaccine manufacturers will provide remuneration if there's a break in their vaccine, but they only do it if it's administered by a veterinarian, licensed veterinarian. If you go to the co-op and get it and administer it, the drug company, the vaccine manufacturer is not going, if your horse gets flu, they're not gonna pay for hospitalization for that flu case because you administered it yourself. So I think education on those those ones that can be vaccinated, you know, people need to know.
Yeah, there is a vaccine guarantee by the manufacturer on veterinary supplied and administered
Yep.
vaccines.
Yep.
Yeah, and I don't think the public
I don't
realizes
think they're
that.
aware of that, you know,
Yeah.
because they're pushed a lot by, you know, outside, you know, there's a lot of vaccines you can buy
Sure,
over the counter.
yeah.
And, so same thing with the cattle.
Yeah.
You know, so that type of education and just general health.
And
The biggest thing that I see too is asking people, well, did you put them by themselves after you brought them home?
Sure.
And the answer inevitably is always no, like they just turn them in.
Yeah.
And so just the, you know, 2 weeks of a little extra work can really save you a lot of heartache later, so.
I believe there's been some West Nile as well, and there's been
There's been a couple of cases.
a couple of cases of West Nile as well, which is a very preventable disease with vaccination.
But I mean, Potomac horse fever, this is, in East Tennessee, this is the time of the year for it. We
Right.
see it, a big uptick.
Such a wet spring and that,
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be at least here, it doesn't have to be associated with rivers or anything like that.
Oh, it doesn't? Okay.
that's why I say, if you turn your barn lights off at night to, stop vector movement from carrying things towards your water pails and stuff, but it's just a pill.
Okay.
And the vaccine's not that great.
Yeah, we see it in Middle Tennessee. We see Potomac horse fever in kind of regional. There's certain hot spots where we see it.
East Tennessee, it's not.
And in East Tennessee, it's just kind of variable. Okay. What about West Tennessee? Is there anybody that could comment about that? I actually don't know. I should probably know, but I don't.
I want to say we had one case maybe out of West Tennessee, or what I would consider West Tennessee, but I don't think anything west of the river. So
Mostly east and then like that central middle part.
middle north.
Yep.
Yeah.
I haven't really heard of anything, and I haven't had any agents ask about farms that they're managing that are dealing with it out there. Not that it can't be, but much more on the East Tennessee side.
Anybody from our Zoom panel got any thoughts on this?
This would be for a question for any of the vets in attendance there. Any incidents of Tyleria having any effect or impact on the equine industry or on horses?
We haven't had any pyroplasmosis or any of the Tylerias that I'm aware of that affect horses. So, if we do, that's usually an investigation, quarantine, and treatment testing type situation. So nothing this year.
Is there any, obviously it's something that's really on the forefront of the cattle industry. Is that something that the equine industry should be as worried about, or does it not nearly impact horses near as much as it would the cattle?
The Tyleria acata that we're worried about in cattle doesn't impact horses. So that's the good news, that they can still carry an infected tick. So if you have cows and horses, it might be a good idea to practice some sort of parasite prevention. So.
Good news. Thank you.
That's a great update. Any other comments from anybody about that? Sounds like we're having a pretty good year, and we've got some issues, but we got a pretty good year overall, which is exciting on the health and welfare front. Thing I'm really excited about is, if we want to move the agenda, is our economic impact survey that the governor as well as the commissioner authorized with the state veterinarian, and our group promoted. Probably, gosh, it seems 2 years ago now, we brought it up and we promoted it. And we've got Dr. Jeannie Ivey here today to give us an update on that. So Jeannie, the floor is yours. Tell us what's happening with our economic impact survey.
Certainly. So the survey was open for Tennessee residents and also people that participated in the equine industry within Tennessee to take from March until August 15th. So we had it open for just about 5 months for several reasons. So, we kind of hit that first wave of individuals that heard about it and wanted to take it. And then we spent the majority of the summer traveling to various different show facility sites and also different areas throughout Tennessee to promote that survey and discuss why it's important and what it means to the industry. And so we also spent a lot of time talking one-on-one with individuals to encourage them to say, it doesn't matter if you don't want to tell us every single piece. The more you're willing to share, the better. But at least if you can tell us about where you are and how many horses you have, that's really impactful. So we had a grad student and several undergrads that really kind of kept the roads hot this summer, and we're appreciative to them. When the survey closed, we had just over 2,000 participants in the survey that completed their respective sections, which is great. So Dr. David Hughes and Jamie Menard are the other co-PIs on this project along with myself. And so that was our target number that they would need from the economic side to be able to do their economic modeling. And then also that we would need to be able to do some of our estimates. And so I do have just some quick data that I'll share with you. But before I get into that, are there any questions about the survey itself, distribution, sample collection, data collection, anything like that?
What is the estimate that 2,000 is a percentage of the potential audience?
You know, that's a really good question, Matt. And one of the things that we're trying to dive into with Dr. Hughes and Mr. Menard, mainly because of the fact that normally we're able to consider population size and sample size with projects relative to a known quantity of people. That is much harder to do in the equine industry because of all those backyard horse owners that may not ever really see anyone besides their private veterinarian and, you know, their feed store. So we really tried our best to target based off of the USDA model and the different pockets that they had identified in their assessments. But because of the way the agricultural census is administered, you only receive an ag census to report your equine population if you make $1,000 or more of equine related income per year. And so most of the recreational owners don't fall into that category. So we did our best, but we know that at least from some economic methods that are definitely not my area of expertise, but that's why we have other collaborators. They're confident they can do that estimate. So I don't know the percentage, but you know, I think we're in a good spot to be able to determine that based off of what methods are out there for those types of calculations.
Do you feel like you had a nice cross-reference of the state? I mean, was it heavier in the west or heavier in the east or heavier in Middle Tennessee, or do you have any idea?
What I will, the short answer is I'm not sure yet. What I will say is that we had a lot more interest in sharing information in the central region and the eastern region. The western region, at least the facilities and the shows that we went to, a lot of the people were not as willing to share information as they were at other locations.
Okay.
And just speaking with my graduate students, some of that was even very discipline dependent. And so some disciplines and some shows were much more willing to share and said, yes, we want this information out, and others were a little bit more guarded, which, you know, is understandable.
Will there be some notes at the end of the survey that states that? Because I think that's really, really important.
Yeah,
When we send this out to the community of horse owners.
yeah, absolutely.
This is Monty McInturf talking. That you know, folks that shared and didn't share is going to influence a lot, and that needs to be stated. I would think.
And as we work through, and I'm just gonna pull up a PowerPoint, just so that way I can more effectively share some of this data with you, but can you all on Zoom see this PowerPoint, just assessing the economic impact? Yeah, thumbs up or?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. And so this project funded, like Dr. McInturf said, from the Tennessee Department of Ag and the state, will be used kind of in different pieces to help generate reports for this commission, for the state, and then also for some outreach components as well. But just to give you an understanding, so we were obviously by design very Tennessee heavy. We did ask out-of-state residents to share information about their activity here in Tennessee, so we could also capture who we were bringing in from out of state. The survey was designed to exit people out of state if they did not show or buy feed or utilize a Tennessee veterinarian or something similar. So that's why there is such obviously a big slant to Tennessee residents, which is okay. And all of this data, I will preface it with the fact that it is raw. So this is truly just what came out of the survey. It has not been analyzed for interpretation, but I wanted to share with you just a little bit of what we look like based upon the survey data that was collected. And so we have kind of a nice representation of income levels across the board, which in just a quick look was reflective additionally of the Tennessee demographics. And similarly with regard to age, and also some of the other demographics I'll show later are very reflective of our population, which is great. Obviously, on the gender side, we know that participants in the equine industry are largely slanted toward the female side. That's reflected nationally and also here in the state, as we've seen in several other surveys. So that was not a surprising result here. And then obviously we wanted to know what amount of their income or how many people had equine related income that was reflected in the numbers that they reported. And so there is a certain, you know, population, typically in other work that we have done here at UT and also other surveys that have been done in other states. Usually the income generated from equine purposes is reflective of about 10% of the entire industry. So those are people that are typically filing a Schedule F for about $10,000 or more of equine related income annually, that are making up that portion of the population. And please feel free to stop me if you all have any questions. So if we look here, we're kind of diving into the actual breakdown of what people's roles were within the industry as they self-reported them. So individuals could self-report over multiple categories. Purple in this particular graph is reflective of a Tennessee resident, yellow reflective of an out-of-state resident. And so the benefit and again, the point of this is for us to capture the economic impact of the equine owner in Tennessee. So obviously we have a majority of participants that were owner related. But then if you look across the rest of the different ways people could impact or affect the equine industry, we actually have a pretty good representation across the board. And I know that this first owner and leaser bar is very high, so it makes everybody else look really low. But we were really happy specifically with the number of farriers. We had about I think 45 farriers take the survey, which is really great. And just that alone, in looking through the literature, is the most data we have from a set of farriers in the country. So that's really great, and we're excited to look at what they shared with us. Additionally, we have a lot of parents of youth, a lot of breeders, people that are in equine sales and brokers, trainers and coaches, boarding facilities. Again, having almost 200 boarding facilities share information with us is a really big benefit to this study. So we're just so excited to be able to see what that looks like and have some information to share in the coming months. This is just a quick estimate here. And again, we know that this is not 100% of the horses that are reflective here in Tennessee. If you look across the different groups that estimate population, Tennessee's equine, including horses, ponies, donkeys, mules, zebras, etc., typically floats anywhere from about 110,000 all the way up to almost 200,000. And so understanding kind of where we fall and what number is real often depends on what type of analyses we run. So when we dig into this data, we will be analyzing based off of information from this little over 8,000 horses and equids that were reported in Tennessee. To give you an estimate, a few years ago, Matt Horseman and I and several others on the extension and TDA front, Dr. Beatty and Lauren were pretty critical in helping us get that done. We did a Coggins assessment. And so we went back through all of the state recorded Coggins data and tried to gather population estimates from that alone. We had about 38,000 raw Coggins forms that we transposed by hand into a digital sheet, and then inflated those to the number of populations that we would expect in the state. And we came out right around 100,000 as well. So I would expect that we would be somewhere in that neighborhood, but to be determined specifically as we go through. Just giving you a little bit of breakdown of breeds. Obviously, late horses coming in at the top, inclusive of thoroughbreds, Arabians, quarter horses, etc. We did break out gaited horses given our role in that aspect of the industry here in Tennessee. And so typically those gaited horses would be lumped in with a light horse by definition, but we did pull them out for that purpose. And so they do make up the second largest component within Tennessee based off of the survey respondents. And then we have kind of a smattering of other between draft, pony, sport, and then others, which could be mules, donkeys, etc.
Yeah, what's a light horse? What's that?
A light horse is technically defined as a horse that is under 1,200 pounds in mature weight.
Okay.
So it really kind of
weighted, yeah.
brings in all of those. Draft is pretty self-explanatory, right? Sport
Okay.
horses are your warm blood or warm blood crosses. Ponies are pony breeds, but that light really encompasses the most number of breeds that we see.
Quarter horses.
Quarter
okay,
horses,
yeah,
Arabians,
okay.
thoroughbreds,
Less than
Um,
1,200 pounds.
Yep. And so I think part of the reason we see such a big proponent of gated, obviously we have the largest number of Tennessee walking horses,
Sure.
being Tennessee. We also have a really large proponent of Morgans, and then Rocky Mountain saddle horses and other gated type breeds. So there were also a lot of different gated support for this survey. So we sent out information to all of the breed registries, all of the discipline registries, and a lot of the gated community were good about sending it out to their membership and really trying to push their representation, which again, we'll discuss in those final reports. Okay, just breaking down age again, just to give us an understanding of where we are and where we sit. As you would expect, a really nice looking kind of bell curve on equine age throughout the state, with the majority of horses falling into that 6 to 20 age range, which we would expect. Some of those living out a little bit past 30, which is great. And then a decent number of foals reported as well. Mares and geldings, pretty equal on the sex side. Several stallions and then some colts and fillies that were broken out just based off of age definition.
One comment I'll make,
Yeah.
there real quick. It's exciting to see the young horses have a strong bar. There was a time there where breeding really dropped off and we had less horses being produced. And so for me, it's exciting to see the young horse population kind of in line with the middle teen horse, which is I would just guesstimate that a handful of years ago, probably 10 years ago, that was not the case. There was a lot. But the majority of our horses were middle-aged to older. So it's exciting to see some foals and some 2-year-olds and some younger horses. Any thoughts on that?
One of the things that as we've looked at it, I'm interested to see, so the data that we pulled from that Coggins was from 2018. So obviously this data being collected off of what people owned or managed in 2021. So I think it will be neat to assess kind of what that 3-year difference is, at least from the Coggins estimates. We didn't do a survey that year to now. I think especially post-COVID, the trend has been that recreation has become very popular again, and people are really kind of plugging back into some more of that homesteading and farmsteading. So potentially that is playing into that here as well.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
That maybe was answered in the pie chart and I just missed it, but did we include other equids like mules?
Yes. Yep. So we have mules, donkeys, and then we defined other equids for them. So that would include if people had a zebra or maybe something that they felt was a very novel equid. So we allowed them to fill that in and type in what they have, and then we will put them back wherever we think
Azores?
Yes, exactly.
Dog.
So we can have that
Sea dog.
information available too. This I think is really great. We asked everyone for their primary usage and defined that as the area in which you participate within the industry with the most amount of your time or highest percentage of your time. So people for this particular graph were not able to kind of report in multiple sections, but they were able to do that for multiple horses. So you could see that the numbers here don't necessarily reflect 2,000 people, but they would be reflective of the approximately 8,000 horses that we had. And so obviously, as we would expect, recreation, idle, retired, and not working, and trail riding were our primary areas that people's participation within the industry. And again, that's very reflective of what the nation looks like and also what we expect here in Tennessee based on previous research. And so we also have a pretty good portion of broodmares, which came in 4th or 5th, I think. And so maybe Dr. McIntyre, if that kind of comes back to your idea of what the industry might look like in the next couple of years if we've got a lot of horses that are producing within the state. And so I think this really helps us just to kind of get a feel for what we look like and maybe what our showing and other data will be reflective of. And so
Can I ask another question real
Yeah,
quick? I'm
of course
sorry.
you can.
This
No,
is
you're
really-
fine.
This is really interesting. Is Were there any declared values in the questionnaire, like, what is your horse worth, or
Yes.
I've forgotten. So
Yes.
you're gonna be able to have some value there.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and so what's not in this mini report is all of the financial components. So we
Right.
really tooled in and said, okay, what would you estimate your horse's value as? Are they registered? Are they not?
Okay.
I think we actually even had a question on pedigree. And then we, in this particular set of data, also talked about their showing expenses. So are they doing open shows or registered shows? How many nights are they spending away and where are they staying? What are their average entry fees, to kind of capture the fact that maybe this is a recreational horse, but these people are still contributing to commerce in different cities as well.
And one other quick question, was there any industry data in this? Did any of the corporate entities, did they share any information?
Like as far as co-op and things like that?
Yeah,
or
Tractor
something
Supply,
like that?
Co-op.
So we did not specifically ask companies to share their information.
Okay,
What we did ask was for individual horse owners or business owners to share their expenditures and then their reflective income.
right,
So say, for example, you have a horse owner that owns a 50 horse boarding facility. They obviously are spending money on certain things, but maybe they're also producing hay and they're also charging board. So we tried to capture all of those pieces within the survey. Some of that will be useful and important for the economic impact.
right.
Some of it, to me, was just important to understand what the industry looked like. And we just don't have a lot of that information, so we're really excited to
So
be.
that brings, this is Stephen there, brings up a question with roughly a 10% of the horse population responsive, perhaps even less as far as actual owners. Are you going to be able to get an accurate reflection of the economic impact of the horse in the state of Tennessee? And that may be for your economists and statistician.
Yeah.
But it just seems with only 8,000 horses, even less owners, that it's going to be pretty hard when you're looking at 100,000 plus in the state to say this very small population is going to
Be reflective.
be reflective of the
Yeah.
entire economic, because that's what is important.
Yes.
Yeah,
And so when we met with Dr. Hughes in kind of developing this and developing our methods and approach, we had a lot of those very real discussions about, how many do we need? What is the total number? And what does that look like? And so I will likely misrepresent it, but it is basically the equivalent of a power analysis, right? How many do we need to detect differences that we use in the animal world? His results on the economic side were appropriate and reflective of this survey, which is part of the reason why we left it open and continue to target those different groups to have enough sample that he was comfortable. I know West Virginia, they did an economic impact survey fairly similar to this, with less respondents. And then 2 or 3 of the other national studies across the country went forward with only 9,000 participants. And so the fact that we have 2,000 is actually a pretty decent sample size to be able to then do those types of calculations. And Dr. Hughes can share more obviously on the methods, but he was comfortable and we were comfortable based off of our side too. That's a good question.
Because that's what is gonna be important, it's not so much the
This,
survey per se.
yes,
It's how can we
expand that.
expand
For
it
sure.
to the entire horse, because
Mhm.
if people are looking at, oh my God, you've only got 8,000 horses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the importance of horses?
we're gonna have to extrapolate the data and find the
Mhm.
significance of it, because that's why we're here today.
Yeah.
Is to show the significance
Of the horse.
of the horse in the state of Tennessee.
Yes,
Yeah, that's why we're here. That's great though, thank you.
yeah. And I
Carry
can-
on, Dr.
I'll say,
Ryan.
and I can ask David to write up a little component from his side too to share with the commission and also publicly just about what that looks like as far as their methods as well. But I thought this was kind of interesting, again, just from our total number of participants, the number of people that are staying away and then the number of nights they're spending away. So a lot of people, with the majority of our showing individuals, are staying away somewhere between 1 and 4 nights, which I think makes sense as far as weekend type shows and things like that. But a lot of them are also not spending any nights away, even though they're showing. So then they're staying more local, right? They're going to just those areas, and maybe that comes back to some of the discussions we've had of smaller venues that are more local to help elevate that industry. Most of them staying in hotels or their own RVs in a living quarters, trailer, something similar. And a reflective about, half or a third of what our survey respondents were that showed in general. So if you remember, we also talked a little bit about, this is towards the end of just kind of the brief summary that I'll share with you, what it would look like at the end if racing was here in Tennessee. How did people view it? What did it look like across the board? And so we asked a set of questions just relative to, these are the different ways that racing could impact the state. Do you think that it would be a positive change or a negative change if we had it here? And so that's the data that you're looking at. So on the bottom, each color representation is indicating, did people or survey respondents think, for example, that grants in gray would be able to be brought in from racing, and could that have a positive impact, negative impact, no impact, or they just didn't know, because we didn't want people to be putting no impact if they really just didn't know how that could apply. And so what I think is interesting, especially on the positive impact side, we see a really big percentage overall relative to no impact or negative impact across the board, which I think is really interesting. Specifically, pink being tourism, Tennessee economy in green, and industry related employment along with grants, equine facilities in the light gray, coming up as the highest potential for positive impact if racing was brought into Tennessee. And so by no means, like I said, have we really dove into what all of this means and all the other aspects of what this data will tell us. But this is just the raw report from the number of people that responded to this question, which I think is really interesting. We also asked specifically, and sorry, this is kind of cut off on the top here, but the impact on the Tennessee industry if betting or racing were legal. And so we asked this question, like I said, kind of the same way, but just a different way to look at the data and how everyone responded to each individual question rather than just the general feeling of positive, negative, or no impact. And so you can see that there's definitely some differential changes in specifically that green positive impact and the orange negative impact, depending on which area we look at, right? So as we probably would expect, equine welfare and management always gets a lot of light on the racing side, good, bad, or indifferent, depending on the way you want to think about the industry and what it brings for the horse and what it does to the economy, and maybe some of the things that are brought up that get a lot of media attention. But as far as, the amount of, again, tourism, industry-related employment, Tennessee economy, and equine facilities, the positive impact there is over half of the participants in the survey. So that is I think, pretty remarkable to look at from a perspective like this. And then we did ask just a general question about COVID and how we felt people were responding based upon the impact of COVID on their economic stability. And most people, similar to a study that we did in 2020, late in 2020, no impact to moderate impact. And those were defined so that way there was not a lot of gray area. So, people maybe are still feeling the impact of COVID, especially on how they reported in the 2021 year, which we know is obviously after, and maybe things were slightly shifted. So we will consider that within our results and our data interpretation as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I hope that at least that kind of gave you an idea of where we're at and what we're doing here in trying to get this information ready to share with you in a more formal stage, both on a summary and an economic impact perspective.
I'm gonna throw it out there, but do you have any idea when we might or any estimate of when that might be finalized? Would it be a year or?
No, so we should have everything done by December. So, when we had asked just for an extension based upon wanting to collect some additional data, we said by the end of the calendar year. So, we're deep in the data analysis component now. And so we should be able to have some of that out in phases over the coming months.
Thank you, Dr. Ivy. It was great information. What you guys were able to get.
Outstanding.
I do have a question. This is maybe more probably for Dr. Hughes and the model he's going to use to develop the economic impact. I would really like to see, and this is kind of goes down a little bit more with the sliver that I deal with, is see some of the factors he uses for the economic impact, especially when you get to the backyard horse owner. They're living in these communities, how far and wide that actually goes. I think making sure, and I'm sure you're working alongside him, is making sure he's understanding kind of how far and wide that goes beyond just what you would see on the surface where there is a tack store or a feed store, anything like that.
Yeah, so like I said, I don't know his exact methods, but I'm happy to kind of send some questions over for him and have him share his answers with the commission. But I do know in a lot of our discussions about developing the survey the way that we did not just want to know where is your horse living and how many do you have. So a lot of those expenditure tables went very detailed into as much as we thought people would be willing to share an answer, right? But also how far they were traveling for different goods and services. So did they feel like they had, a feed store within X number of ranges and miles? We also did the same for veterinarians, so we could try to determine which pockets may not be served with veterinarians and farriers. And then also how far they were going to get their hay and other feed type commodities. Because we thought that was an important component, especially on the border. If people are leaving the state to get hay, is there a way that we can maybe help to bring some of that back into our economy, or what's being lost outside of the state?
Okay, well, I guess some of them I was looking at is just the number of people that build a barn, the maintenance that goes into building those barns, not only just the upkeep of or building a fence, but the upkeep and all the little things that come from owning the backyard farms that don't necessarily have equine written directly on the receipt.
Yeah, I'll make sure to check with him and get you that information, Matt, but I believe it's captured in there.
Okay, great. That's awesome. I think that would really benefit us in the long run. I know personally when we're trying to work on issues in our communities, when we're trying to address the equine industry, they view it as the people they see when they see a very large barn, and so then they think it's a limited number of people. When it becomes a general public issue or with funds, and they don't realize the number of taxpayers that have a horse in the sheer scope and size of some of them. So
yeah, absolutely. I'll try and see while we're chatting if I can pull up some of those tables that were actually in the survey, because that may help to answer your question based off of what individuals reported. But I believe as they went in, they had we were asked them to disclose if they had a facility, a barn, a structure, something like that, even for those horse owners that had one horse in the backyard. And so that information should be captured in their expenditures. Any other questions on the survey or things I can help to share?
John Elder, just the section on racing, was that everybody who filled that out? It wasn't directed, so anybody who filled it out had an opportunity. Did you find most people answered that section as well, or was it? Or do you?
If they made it to that section and they were
far?
and they were not like, you know what, we're out, I'm done, they answered those questions. Specifically when we were talking to people trying to encourage them, we also talked about the importance of sharing that information with us. So I think we did get a lot of respondents who looked at it. I did not just tally up, I can pull it up here, but I would say at least 3/4 of what we have is on the racing side, which is neat.
Okay.
Any other thoughts or comments? I'm excited that, December, we're actually gonna have the information to disseminate and share, and I'm thinking the process is the state will review it and then they'll pass it on to our commission and whoever, and so thank you so much for that, and I think we're all still in agreement that this kind of information is what we need to kind of rally support for the horse, and once we get that information out there, hopefully that's gonna help us, so that's awesome. We've got a little more business. I'm gonna call for a 5-minute break, if that's okay. Just take a quick little break, restroom break, and we'll be back in 5 minutes, if that's okay.
Certainly.
Thank you. That was awesome. That's good stuff. Okay, team, we're all back together. We're gonna have to take a quick roll call, so that we've got everybody, so that Mr. Miller makes sure that we got everybody present. So if I could get Mr. Matt Smith to do a quick roll call of the members so we can get our meeting going again.
Let's do it. Dr. Steve Adair,
Present.
John Elder,
Present.
Dr. Monty McInturf,
Present.
Dr. Samantha Beatty,
Present.
Matt Smith, present alone, Mr. Matt Horseman,
Present.
Dr. Jenny Ivy.
Present.
That is the attendance for the members.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. We're gonna dive back in here. I think we're gonna turn our discussion back over to our state veterinarian, Dr. Beatty, to give us a quick welfare update, if you don't mind. She's got that data for us.
So yeah, I quickly pulled the numbers, and from this day last year until today, we've received 547 livestock welfare complaints. 390 of those are all related to equids of some sort. And out of the 390 specifically, I extracted those and looked at how many of those had probable cause determinations. So far, that's 36. So I can tell you that I can pull every complaint we've gotten, but if it is if it's not a closed case and probable cause is not reported in the record, we'll still have the complaint listed. I just won't have the outcome. So we're probably running at about a 10%, which that's close to where we were in previous years. We somewhere between 12 and 11%. So we're down just a little bit.
Are all those equine?
Those 36 are equine.
Equine, okay.
Yeah, there are more probable cause determinations.
36 equine, okay.
Yeah.
And do you have any, is that across the whole state? Or is it more heavy one
Um,
zone than another? I mean,
I don't know if I'm able to share it very well, but it basically is most heavily weighted in East Tennessee. And then we do see a few spots in Middle, not so much in the West Tennessee area. So I'll try to be more efficient at the next meeting. And
oh,
have
no
a map
problem.
blown
That's
up.
great. Just a quick update
Yeah.
is all we need. And
But it was 36 horses that had probable cause. It's not, there's 300 and something.
That's 300. That's 36 probable cause. That's not. They may have had 10 horses on their premises, right? Like that's just for the case. And so we had 390 complaints. So that's definitely more than 390 horses. I can tell you just based on the history. And what was I going to say? I mean, we're finding it mostly related to, I mean, just lack of, groceriosis is what, there, no food, no concept of what feeding is like. We refer a lot of people to Dr. Ivy for assistance. And again, that doesn't mean these are all the animals that had deficits, right? Like we see a significant number of animals where we try to give people an opportunity to improve the care that they're giving. We refer them to veterinarians, to nutritionists, to extension, and talk to them about, options. And then we will recheck that premises to see if they've made progress. So there's a lot of man hours that go into livestock welfare, and Ag Crime is gracious enough to assist us with that. If we don't have the ability to get local law enforcement to accompany us, Ag Crime will go out during times like this where we're extremely short-staffed and we're responding to an emergency. Ag Crime officers are actually trained and will, if they feel confident in a case, they'll call it. If they think it's suspect, they'll ask for one of us to follow up and come out with them. So we have, a decent number of people who are working on it. And I don't know if it would help this advisory committee at all to know, actually how much time we do devote to livestock welfare as part of our, duties, because we always guess it's around 30%, but I don't really have a solid estimate. And that goes back to what the citizens of Tennessee are getting for their tax dollars and how much time and effort we're putting into that. So I don't know if that'd be of interest to you, but that's just something to think about.
I think, as long as it doesn't put an extremely taxing burden on you guys to calculate that, even just a rough estimate, I think may be helpful, especially in just thinking about the number of cases you see, the hours on each of those cases, and then what that means as far as being able to effectively educate and the ways that maybe the other groups can help provide some of that information to hopefully cut that hour time down.
Yeah. Nobody has any questions about livestock welfare? Again, I will throw in one thing that we have seen a lot of increase in, and that's illegal movements of horses. I mean, they happen all the time. I'm not, oblivious to that, but it's actual, people moving animals in, and we get a CVI without an EIA, or we get an EIA through IDEX lab that we don't have a CVI for, or, something like, we get notified of a movement, and we are across the board, all species, trying to be more diligent about reaching out to people, making sure that those animals are quarantined until they get a health check, because as the world becomes smaller and animals move, just the ability to have an emerging disease pop up is, pretty significant. And so trying to help people understand it's not so much a punitive type thing, but it's we really need your cooperation in this. So, and typically all that looks like is you have 30 days to get a health certificate from your veterinarian, and then you're good to go.
That's good stuff. Anybody else got any comments on welfare for Dr. Beatty? Thank you, Dr. Beatty.
Dr. McIntyre, I do have one,
Sure.
as we're following up on things, that
Yeah.
5-minute break was useful.
Yeah.
So relative to the estimation and Dr. Adair's question, Dr. Hughes and Mr. Menard did a population estimate in West Virginia several years ago. And so their method's similar to ours, where we develop mailing lists and utilize social media. But their survey set returned a total of 326 surveys from their initial mailing. And then they did a follow-up mailer where they were able to receive an additional 36. So they ran that entire in-plan model for the state of West Virginia off of a little less than 400 survey responses. So, in determining where we kind of fell with the USDA estimates, that's around where we said about that 2,000 number would be adequate for the information that we had. So, the actual calculation, I'm not sure, but that I knew he had pulled it from this paper,
So just one quick thought that just popped into my mind. I'm sure this has been done in the bovine industry before. What percentage of participation do we get in the cattle industry on these type of surveys? Got any information on that?
So most of the time you're doing really well if you send out a survey and you get over 20% response rate. That's almost unheard of. And so especially without some sort of a carrot to dangle as far as, incentivizing their participation and things like that. One of the benefits of some of the other production livestock industries is the fact that we know typically where a lot of those are. So if you think about the registered dairies, right, we know exactly how many there are, we can find them, and that makes surveying them substantially easier. Same thing with, cattle production. So at least at a minimum, if we know where someone has sold an animal from, we can then reach out to them. So some of the equine methods in other states look very different than production livestock just because of that reason. But like I said, you're doing great if you're over 20% response rate for a survey, unfortunately.
Perfect. Good stuff. Thank you. Well, I was hoping to dive back into really the purpose of why we're here. I mean, the purpose of why we're here is to make recommendations to our leadership, to the governor and the commissioner of agriculture, to make sure that we are, that we're kind of advising them and helping them in the process. And we sent a letter to the governor. January, hope you can see that, January of this past year. And I thought it might be nice if our commission just kind of went through this really quick. We hit 4 points. I want to report that the Commissioner of Agriculture, Dr. Hatcher, has not gotten information back from the governor directly on this. And I personally have not spoken to the governor about it. Dr. Beatty, have you spoken to the governor about our letter?
I've spoken to the commissioner, and I did follow up with him recently, and basically he feels like that, because of the lack of like a definitive response or a letter in response, that things are fine. Just waiting on that information from the study will give us a better idea of what direction that we're going. So
Right.
They're aware that we're waiting on that information to give us a
roadmap.
better, something that we can plan off of. So.
Well, I think it's good for us while we're all together to go back through this really quick, because at the end of this year, first of next year, we're going to have to draft another letter. And at this meeting, I don't know that we have to have a vote today, but we do need to start building a document of points we'd like to continue to hit and to clarify. So I thought I would just, if everybody can see this, I thought we would just take the first paragraph, because it's 4 points that we hit, and I can scroll this down here. The first point was on the health of our horses and the importance of continued support of state agencies that monitor our current health requirements. And the big point was biosecurity. And I think today in our meeting, we talked about the emerging diseases that are present and the emerging risks. Would our group feel like we want to continue to have that as one of our points this year? Any comments on that?
I think you have to.
I think anytime you put any topic off a list, it may drop it from being any sort of priority. And so I agree. I think it needs to stay on there.
Well, that, and moving right into the second point, health and welfare have got to be up foremost and of this. If that's not the primary emphasis, then what are we here for? Now, I certainly go along with the equine industry and the promoting the horse and economics and stuff like that. But bottom line is, it's going to be the health and the welfare of the horse. And I'm sorry, and I think I mentioned this way back when. Bottom line is, it comes down to money. Really adequate funding. Because Dr. Beatty's office is, you're low on personnel. You don't have the personnel, so you're having to rely on others. So having some kind of mechanism to investigate and surveillance and stuff it costs money. And, that's why this economic impact statement study is so critical, is to show that there is a significant impact on the state by the horse, and the state should be willing to support. that industry. I mean, I hate to be blunt about it, but that's
That's
what.
good, that's why
I
we're
mean,
here.
I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's why we're here, for everybody to be blunt about it. I appreciate that, Dr. Adair.
And maybe that's, would, beyond education and outreach, and I'll go back to something that Matt Horstman mentioned a long time ago about, we have industry programs for other animals. I don't want to overstep myself here, but would increasing support for education and outreach decrease the cost to the state and have a more positive impact?
Oh, I'm sure it would.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can educate to where you don't have as many illegal animals moving into the state, if you're able to contain and improve biosecurity and surveillance, and people are aware that they need to get things done before they go in and out of the state. If you look at, well, this is how you feed a horse, you got a lot less welfare issues to deal with, and it just.
The master equine class is awesome. I mean, I've taken it as part of just with my animal health technicians in preparation for investigating animal welfare and getting more people involved in that. Like, how do you incentivize them? So,
for the purpose of those that are not familiar with the program, it runs very similar to our other master programs that are offered through Extension, Master Beef, Master Small Ruminant, etc. One of the biggest challenges that we have faced in the years that I've been here leading the program is the cost of participation in the program, because the costs are real, and the agent's time to deliver it alongside of all of the other programs. And so we have tried to combat that in two ways. My office offers one state coordinated program every year that is virtual. So it has helped bring people in counties that may not have a program that year. It greatly reduced the travel costs of specialists running to deliver those programs. But the challenge is that it does pull it away from the county to a certain extent, because they're not there. We try to help them make that county connection, but it's still different than a program that's offered physically by your extension office. And the second is that I don't know that we're still reaching the people that need to hear the message, right? And so, relative to really the first 2 points within the letter, if we can find ways to help reduce the cost across the board to make that more affordable for people, I do think it may help. Hopefully, what do you need to do to feed, and some of the negligence or even just lack of knowledge that contributes to what we see in the industry. I don't necessarily have the perspective of what the cost would be to help to try to offer that across the board, but I think if we can work through that would be great.
And that kind of gets down to the third point there.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the other thing I'll throw out is, what about expanding partnerships and getting cooperations from other large entities within the state, private entities such as Farm Bureau, such as Ag Central Co-op, those type of, and have them promote, host, whatever, that type of situation also.
Mm-hmm.
That would be another idea, but, I totally agree that it again, it comes down to funding and funding additional dollars into extension to be able to promote this across the state.
And to give you an example, so right now the state program that I coordinate, we offer it for $165 as pre-registration and $195 as a late registration. But within that, they're getting over 18 hours of instruction. They get access to the classroom. We use it through Google Classroom to make it free. All the references, a manual, their certificate, and a sign. And a forage test, because we feel like it's important that they're starting to understand what those pieces look like. The complaint that we have heard is that that's still too expensive. And so if you look for a comparative program in other states, they're running $300, $400, and $500. So we're already much cheaper than what other states run for a similar program. And it's comprehensive, so we spend weeks on nutrition and veterinary care and preventative maintenance, and go into facilities and waste and things like that. So trying to find that balance of, if you make it free, they don't think it's worth anything, right? And it's free, so it must not be good. But then also, what is the cost to help us, on the labor lift of time, which comes back to your point of we need, some additional funding.
If you do the math, 18 hours, $165, that's $9 an hour. That's cheap, right? And so someone that says that's too much probably doesn't want to give the time.
Right.
Because that's not too much money.
And then
Really
that's where
not.
you're kind of missing probably the people that need that message,
Yeah.
that are not maybe really reaching out to elevate it. So, and I know Matt Horseman and I have had this discussion several times about how to make it more affordable and what that looks like to bring more people in.
Well, we've talked about it on the cattle side. The cattle side, you have an incentive to take it, right? If you get your certificate for passing the master beef program, you get access to some state funding that's available for graduates of that course. That is a driver for someone to take the time, and that is a driver for someone to take the expense. And so what I hear you saying is it's a good value. We just need to incentivize or have it paid for. But if you pay for something for somebody and it's free, it doesn't mean they're going to come. So we actually need people to do it, right? So using the beef model would be amazing if we could get to that.
And I think back to the economic impact, you could easily make the argument that where do we want to place the emphasis within the state? Does that need to go to the recreational backyard style owner, or does that need to go to developing and improving the economic side from people that are making income or producing something for the equine economy? And I think that's where a lot of the discussion that I've seen from the state side and from the university side of how do we balance the fact that the equine industry is different than a lot of the other production livestock industries based on how they run and what they do with their animals over time.
I think you can't have one without the other though. So the focus on industry and the focus on the backyard owner, because ultimately those animals in industry outlive their usefulness maybe at a younger age, and they end up in this component because of terminal destinations for horses and that sort of thing. So but if you can demonstrate that industry's making an impact and expanding industry in a way that it is economically positive, then it would help us potentially find justification for funds to help support those folks who take on the backyard horse or the pleasure horse or the pet, if that makes any sense.
Well, I mean, from a realistic standpoint, if I was a state legislature, what are my constituents complaining the most about? Grocery cost, fuel cost, fentanyl overdosing. So a lot of the general public is basically consider horses luxury. And so we have to make a case that it is an important aspect to the state. And industry is a big part of it versus the backyard horse.
Based on some of the feedback that I've gotten directly to my office this year and to myself, I think that our legislators are becoming more aware of the welfare issue. So.
Yep. And that's, to be honest with you, that's why that should still be up there. I actually wonder if the second point should actually be moved to the top of the list, or at least those two combined, because I guarantee you the welfare issue is something that is extremely visible, much more so than a positive Coggins test in West Tennessee.
I will say at these competitions that the folks viewing, the spectators, are more concerned about the horse that's hurt than they are the rider that's maybe fallen off or the rider they're concerned about the rider as well, but they're very concerned about the horse. So You know, us putting our best foot forward for welfare is, like you're saying, is very important.
And that's why, you know, in future iterations, you know, putting it at the top of the list and just flip-flopping 1 and 2
Okay.
may, just to make, I mean,
Yeah.
granted, they're both important.
Oh, sure.
but, you know, I think putting it at the top makes it.
It's interesting that welfare numbers from last year and what you reported this year, that 10% number is still kind of in line. The numbers was up a little bit, overall gross, but percentage wise, it's of horses that
But,
criminal action.
I'm somewhat amazed because of the number of horses that come through UT on a yearly basis.
And I mean, there's obviously various aspects to what the welfare definition encompasses, but we just finished a refeeding project for starved horses, and a lot of that, we just had a paper accepted yesterday, actually, which is really exciting. So a lot of that data will be coming out on at least some information on refeeding practices, physiologic impacts. And then also, unfortunately, because we did have some horses that we had to euthanize because of disease, that became its own kind of separate component of the project. So those will come out in the coming months that may at least help inform this commission on ways that we can help within the state.
And one of the things I will say is that at the last sunset hearing, because we'll come up again for sunset this year, I think, you're really not given much of an opportunity to explain what you're doing. The questions are more pointed than that. And one of the bigger questions that I kept getting from legislators that they really drove home, and I answered it like 3 times, was, are you doing anything to help the welfare of horses? You know, and that's, that would be my take home from that particular meeting, was that's a very big focus for them, because that's what they're hearing from constituents, because we do have such a large number of.
Well, I mean, let's face it, from a welfare standpoint, what is shelter? Shelter in Tennessee is a tree. You know, if you get right down to it, nobody has to have a run-in shed or anything like that, or a barn. A tree is considered adequate shelter. I think
You're right, because there is no codification in law that defines what care standards are. So we rely on basically the programs that, you know, Extension, they give minimum care standards, and that's what they are. They're minimum care standards. I think most people who are truly engaged in care of animals do a little more than minimum care standards, but there's a limit to what is you know, that the bar is still pretty challenging when you have to meet probable cause in Tennessee. So because there is no.
yeah, because they're considered chattel.
Yeah, and so we use basically all of the criteria that Extension gives us that is industry standard. You know, like, this is how much a horse needs to drink a day just to stand there and survive. This is how much they need to eat to meet their metabolic requirements. And
Yeah, so one thing that I'm seeing in my circle, being a veterinarian, I'm seeing more and more people call from farther and farther away for emergency care. And there's multiple factors there. But the one thing that we're saying is, do you have access to a trailer? You know, emergency clinics in small animal is industry standard. A lot of veterinarians at 5, 6 o'clock, whatever, they close their door and they send you to the emergency clinic. It's a true emergency after hours, and it's accepted widely in small animal medicine. It's industry standard. It's not industry standard in agriculture. And I'm of the opinion that a responsible horse owner should have access to a trailer. They don't have to own their own. They don't have to, but they should have access to one, so that if that horse truly needs emergency care, that should be a way they could load their horse up and take them somewhere for care, just like we would our dog or our cat or what have you. Now, that's a whole different discussion, but I think the model has been different than that in our state for years, where the veterinarian is required to go to them, and veterinary medicine has been beaten up aggressively over that issue by the agricultural community. And you hear that in we don't have enough vets, we don't have this, we don't have that. But when you ask them if they have access to a trailer, most of them do. They just don't want to take the time to load their horse up. And I just wanted to let the record state that that's part of caring for your horse. If it's an emergency, you ought to be willing to load your horse up and take it to a facility for care. Now, if it's an economic issue, I understand, but I know firsthand that when we have horses come in that need help, that folks can't afford the help, we give them alternatives to make sure that horse is not suffering. And that's, I think the community should know that. And I think many practices are just like our practice. So I just throw that out there for
And I
comment.
certainly agree with the trailer aspect, however, I do feel like that where a person can actually carry a horse to get it looked at is becoming less and less. Because, we're not graduating, those individuals, most of the individuals, just simply because of quality of life issues and salary, are electing not to go into large animal and or even mixed animal. Most of them are going into small animal. And so the accessibility that the horse owner has within a reasonable distance from their farm is that distance is getting further and further, and they're having to drive 2 and 3 and 4 hours to get veterinary care. So it's
Well, that's an issue in a lot of states. You look at
Yeah.
Texas, you look at, I mean, these
agree.
big states, folks realize I got a horse, and those states, for some reason, people don't mind driving 2.5 hours to get their horse looked at.
But I do think that is another area the state could look into, or the equine industry could look into, is, making sure there is adequate health care
Sure.
throughout the state, from a reasonable distance.
There is a new, and so you may be familiar with the VLMRP, which is the Veterinary Loan Payment Program. It's been in place forever. The challenge is, getting someone to commit to being a solo practitioner in an area, and they, there's no startup funding, it just will pay your loans back, right? And so we've been trying to target areas where there may be a practice that could take those folks in, where the practice actually is accessible to a larger, like a county region, so they will travel. We still haven't had a lot of takers. I do have large animal veterinarians, equine and bovine, call me and say, what are we gonna do? Because I'm 50 years old and I'm not gonna do this forever. And how can we, well, just to be, I don't want to offend, this is just what's been shared with me, but how can we get the veterinary schools to recognize that the 4.0 students that come out of undergrad, and who also desire to be veterinarians, but what about the good old boys and girls who got a 3.2 that can't, they're not as competitive?
A little bit in defense, the grade point average, the cutoff for Tennessee residents is 2.8.
Yeah,
So
but their competitiveness with those people, I mean, I know I'm not saying one way or the other. It's just, how do you recruit those students when they feel like they don't have an opportunity, that they can't compete with the 3.8s and the 3.6s? And
Well, there's multiple factors there. I don't know that we're gonna solve that one today, but I do want the record to state that what you're saying about regional emergency facilities for the horse and the model that small animal has may be a model we need to think about in our state in the future. And everybody widely accept, and that's gonna work if people can transport their animal.
Right.
That was my point I was trying to make. Only because the horse deserves care if it's in trouble. And sometimes they can't be transported. They're down, they're in a hole, whatever. That's a different situation, but many times they can be. They're bleeding, they're sick, they're whatever.
So one of the things, when you and I sat on that panel with Matt Horseman, probably almost a year ago now, the discussion in that group was the same. You know, my area doesn't have a veterinarian that I can find, or I'm having trouble setting up just a relationship because I can't find someone who will consistently come to my area. So built in and kind of on the backside of that economic impact survey was a way for us to match owner reported county with accessibility to a veterinarian and a farrier, and then what the veterinarians and the farriers list as their type of practice. So whether they were more of a brick and mortar with ambulatory only, and if they offer emergency services, and overlay that in some GIS mapping. So that's kind of the economic side is where Dr. Hughes is kind of leaning, and I'm more on the other component. So some of that will also float out as in those reports that may just help to inform some of these discussions as we move forward.
It's really good stuff. Any comments from the Zoom team?
Well, I just wanted to add a few comments, circling back probably to a few of the prior conversations, and comment a little bit on the master horse class and then ag enhancement and that connection. You know, just echoing a lot of what Dr. Ivy said. Most, you know, I would say almost every person that's participated in a lot of the master horse classes are not the candidates that you are having any issues with welfare. They're obviously people that are seeking out additional knowledge, so they typically don't fall in there. Where the master beef session with the incentive program, you tend to get a little bit more wide variety. So you could have some of those candidates that would potentially fall into those areas participating in that class, where they do, hopefully by participating in the class, get a little bit more information that causes them to maybe adjust some of their habits. So so great getting that next level, getting into that next level of the master horse, and to getting participants that maybe would be benefited by having some of that knowledge is the key. The ag enhancement continues to be brought up. It's been brought up ever since I've been here, and obviously there's a lot of challenges to that when you start looking at, you know, economic value and start looking at Schedule Fs and things like that as far as farm income and reporting and backyard producers, and so it becomes more and more difficult. But it certainly has created a larger network. I mean, I think you could probably say that 80% or more of producers, of beef producers, or even some of the small ruminant producers are somewhere accounted for in the state database. So we pretty much know where almost every producer is at. So that would certainly help on the equine side. The biggest challenge is finding where's your entry point for the equine industry when you don't talk about there being an economic impact or a agricultural impact. And so when I've been thinking about this because it's such a broad topic, and you know, if you look at it, they don't do fencing, they don't do feed, they don't do pastures, they don't do a lot of things that would be a lot of value to the equine industry. So trying to get something separate for horses that they don't do for the rest of the industries, I think would be very difficult. And so I think the bigger thing is can we look at what is currently being offered on the beef or the small ruminant or row crop or dairy or whatever that may be, and is there a fit somewhere on the equine side? Because I think once you get in the door, then I think you have a few more options, but getting in the door is the biggest incentive. To me, as I look back at one of the big pushes that occurred over the last 2 years, maybe even 3 years, I can't remember. I think this is the third year, but there's a really big jump this past year that based on all of our conversations, this seems like this is a great fit and entry point for the equine side to have justification is on the equine health. So one of the options for the beef is herd health. And this is where there's an incentive payment. It's almost $1 for $1, but to do the basics of herd health. So for cattle, it would be getting 2 or 3 different types of vaccinations, castrating. Now that this year, there's deworming. There's doing some different disease tests. And so there's quite a few different things that go into that. And I think that there is a flat payment per animal, but there's a total of, I think, $6,000. And so based on some of the things that we're hearing about animals getting the right vaccinations and things like that, and this being the Equine Health Commission, that might be a good launching point, because we have obviously Dr. Beatty can probably comment a little bit more, but we obviously have a commissioner that's unique. There's only 2 of those in the entire country that are veterinarians, so that's a passion point right there. The emphasis of what we're doing right now, this could be an entry point for us, is to say we want to start with equine health, and an incentive. It may not be $1 for dollar, maybe it's 50 cents on the dollar, or 50%, but that might be an entry point for us to say, this is what we would like to specifically request, rather than just saying we want to be part of ag enhancement. We want to be part of herd health, equine health, and we want to incentivize getting vaccinations or whatever that might encompass. You guys would be better fit to tell us what that might look like.
Well, that's huge. That's awesome. I mean, if some type of program like that could be adopted, that would be well received. I think the equine industry would really like that. But
Is there some argument that, not argument, but is there some, can we as a commission provide support for TAEP funding if it incentivizes people to become more self-sufficient? They take better care of their animals, and it decreases the burden on the state, right? Or on, I mean, that's.
well, if you
So,
had a program that you could give to someone that says they're financially having trouble, that would be an incentivized. Well, you say you can't. Well, here's a program that would help you do that.
So I have 2 kind of thoughts on that. The first is, in my experience with ag enhancement, and by no means am I trying to speak for the voice of that program, but there's been a lot of discussion about whether the program is designed to assess big issues like welfare and like other things in the state, or is it to help educate and then improve productivity levels? And I think you could make the argument that they're hand in hand. But some of the question has been, is there a separate program that maybe assesses helping that person who is really in need versus changing the way they can produce animals for the productivity of Tennessee livestock? And I think some of that has been the gray area of the equine industry. And what does that look like potentially for ag enhancement versus other types of programs to help elevate it? And I think some of that may be a discussion with the people that run that program.
But I think one is a Band-Aid, right? A program for people who need help because they're in, one is a stepping stone to better management.
Yes.
And that would be the one that long term, this is your best
What you wanna
option.
do.
Yeah.
The other is that several years ago, Roger Elder and I had sat down and combed through in detail the Tennessee Ag Enhancement Program applications and the different programs that are offered, and looked at, from an equine perspective, what might be useful, what might be feasible based off of the differences in our industry versus not. And I still have that report, so at future meetings, I know we, might be worthwhile, especially just given some conversations at that oversight meeting we had last week with members of TAEP, TDA, and then UT, and maybe what might help these issues if ag enhancement were to be considered. So I'm happy to share that in the future if it would be helpful.
I just wanted to say real quick that my computer's getting ready to die and I don't have my cord. So I just want to let you know, if this pops, you got a cord.
I don't know quite.
It's a Dell, just like yours. But I just wanted to thank you for that. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I
No,
apologize.
that's okay. That was
But
it.
when my computer dies, my points are gonna drop off here. That's awesome stuff, and I'm hoping Matt Smith's got that in his notes.
Move your computer.
Yeah. So the third point, just to kind of keep the process going, we talked about the equine industry and how important. Shucks. We talked about the equine industry and how important it is for that economic impact study, and that's coming. So we're gonna have that to kind of glean on, hopefully when we meet, whenever we meet again. And the fourth point was talking about the importance of having a unified voice and how we all felt it was a great idea. At our meeting we had with horse stakeholders last fall, it was a lot of great discussion. We've had great discussion in here. I wanted to just give the group an update from my chair. I'm a member of the Tennessee Volunteer Horsemen's Association, and the Tennessee Volunteer Horsemen's Association puts on the Iroquois steeplechase every year. That's what we do. We put on the steeplechase race, and it's a group. I'm on the board of that group. I want to let the committee know. I have been for quite a few years. It's a really great group of people. I had shared with them that, hey, you know, we really want to get this economic impact information out, and hopefully it's going to bring all the industries up. It's going to help that piece. It's going to help all of us. And they got excited about it. And I explained to them that we really don't have a not-for-profit arm that can pull us all together, that each of our disciplines could have a voice for. So, and I think I mentioned it to some of you. I just wanted to publicly state that we have a small group of us, there's 3 of us, we have worked with an attorney, and we have formed a not-for-profit. It's called the Tennessee Equine Alliance, and we have formed that not-for-profit using the Virginia model. Virginia has a model. We just didn't make this up. We used their model, and we took a lot of their information. We didn't take it. We gleaned it. We gleaned a lot of their stuff, and we formed this. And we've got a really great, what I feel like is a really great format. And we have sent that into the IRS, and we formally got approved. It's not a 501c3. I think it's a 501c6 or something. There's different tax deductible arms. This is a true not-for-profit group. Right now it has a membership of 3, which is the people that formed it. We had hoped to have a membership drive this past summer, and after talking to some folks, we felt like, you know, having this economic impact data was really important to kind of see what the state wanted to do. We want to work in harmony with the state. So the state and its wishes is what we want to try to accomplish. But we also want to take this other piece, which is the economic strength of the horse industry in our state, like our horse shows and the things that we're doing, promote them as well, our competition horses and things like that. So I'm excited that that's how far down the road we are. Don't have a lot more information for the group, but I just wanted to let the public know and let this committee know that the Tennessee Equine Alliance has been formed, and hopefully over the next year we're going to be able to launch a membership drive and really formally have a unified group. The direction we go, the big driver for that is going to be what Dr. Adair stated earlier, is money. To really make a big impact, we're going to need money, and so that we can put that back into our industry. Wanted to state that for the record. This commission is invited to be a part of that if they choose to. The whole horse population of our state is invited to be a part of it. I'm excited about what might happen. On that note, I want to spin into something else, and I'll entertain questions. The group that put together the horseman stakeholder meeting last year is planning to do that again, and they're wanting to have that meeting in January. It's kind of late in the year to try to call a meeting. They're looking at, I think it was the 10th or the 12th. I can get you the date, but the person putting it together asked if, instead of having a random group of horsemen come, maybe members from this council could come and we could field questions from our perspective to this group. I thought it was a great idea. I said I couldn't speak for our group. But I was on the panel last year with Dr. Ivy, and it was a lot of fun. Got to meet a lot of new people. I know Matt Horseman helped put that on. I wanted to entertain some conversation on that as well.
I mean, for me, I thought it was a really valuable experience, not only just from being able to share perspectives with a larger group of people on issues that were interesting to them and charged for them in some cases. And I think it also helped me put some ideas together in ways that I had not specifically synthesized before, just based upon the discussion, like, you know, the mapping of different areas for the veterinary care and bringing some other pieces together. So I'm happy to be a part of it, whether it's for this commission or, you know, through the university or both.
My question would be is, what would we as a commission answer? I mean, because there's really not any definitive, you know, plans being made, you know. I wouldn't know what to say.
I'll speak to that. I was thinking we as a commission could help to bring the survey data in January that's going to be released in December, and maybe do a short presentation on what Dr. Ivy could.
Well, is it gonna be released? I mean, it's gotta go.
It will be shared with the state in December.
So it's not.
So it may
publicly
not be
released.
may not be ready for public
Public
discussion as much
discussion.
as discussion within, you know, the PIs and the collaborators as we prep it for then.
Yeah,
My hope is that it's releasable because we have that report due on February the 1st. And so I can definitely talk to the commissioner, but I'd like this year for us to be able to demonstrate some objective targets based off of that data in that report. If we can, it's a short turnaround time, I know, we may not be able to do it, but you understand what I'm saying, because
Sure.
you and I have collaborated on that
Yeah,
report.
yeah.
but
So you said
February
February 1st is
It's
when?
due to the governor. and
Okay.
the commissioner.
this commission having knowledge of it, since it's a state committee, you know, it just, I just don't know what the timeline would be to be released for public viewing, which I don't think is gonna be January 1.
Well, yeah, so maybe it's not available, and so it wouldn't have to be our whole commission there. It could be representatives of our commission for the panel. It was just, you know, we're all people that care about the health and welfare of the horse, and a lot of comments are made at those meetings about that. So
I would say at least what I saw there was a lot of questions about like the state of the state. You know, what are you seeing with regard to, you know, education? Where are we failing maybe on the biosecurity side, and how can we be better about that as we go out? So I think it may be different if it's titled as the Equine Health Commission is this panel, but rather as a professional being on it last time, it was much more of a discussion about kind of the state of Tennessee and things that were important to horse owners. And Matt, I don't know if that summarizes it as much maybe from your perspective, but.
No, I think that's a great perspective. And also to me, I always look at it as this is I look for a lot of these people as that this is a group. This is actually something that is unified in the equine industry, and maybe they see it as a building block. So as they see the commission of people there, they see that as a building block for things moving forward. So as we talk about that, there's a face and names to be put to that. So when we do follow back up with more requests and information, there's a connection to me that's built through that. I thought it was a great event last night or last year. It is going to be, or we are looking at January 12th. That is at Battle Mountain Farms, which is Commissioner Hatcher's family venue. It's a beautiful venue, but yeah, I think when Dr. McInturf came with the idea of bringing the Equine Commission, I think that's a great idea. There's so much great knowledge just on the panel regarding the equine industry. Even if you went outside of the scope of what the Equine Commission does. Just the people on that panel can ask and answer such a variety of questions that that'll be, I think, enlightening and entertaining for so many of the groups anyway.
And there's a lot of folks that don't even know we exist. They'd probably be pleased to know there's actually a group that does care about the health and the welfare and the economic impact of the industry. And so we can talk about just what we're doing, whether if we give detail or not. We may not be able to give detail, but we can introduce the concept of what we're doing. And we don't all have to be there. It was kind of more of a, this might be a nice segue. So
Yep.
Matt's office puts that together. So thank you, Matt.
Well, you're welcome. It was fun, and it was I think a great building block, and that'll be a good opportunity to showcase the alliance if we're able to get to it at that point.
Yeah.
So I like it because it gives people an opportunity to move to something and to take action. So if they move from that night to be able to take action by joining the Equine Alliance, or if we're at all possible, then they feel like they're doing something to further the industry.
Any other thoughts, pros or cons?
Dr. McInturf, this is Jay Miller with the department. I was wondering if I might offer comments for the commission's consideration.
Sure.
Okay. And before I start, let me emphasize, I don't think that we're anywhere close to a basis of concern, but I just did want to highlight some things for people's general awareness in the commission's business going forward in regular practice. Number one, if you do have multiple members showing up to an organized event like this, you'll want to be mindful of not taking up commission business outside of a noticed public meeting, right? You don't want to show up at a conference and accidentally find yourself really deliberating on commission business and not having noticed it publicly and that sort of thing, because we would have public meetings laws concerns if that were to happen. The other thing that I wanted to point out, just because everyone has been very frank, which I think is great, about the need for money and that sort of thing. And I know that everyone on this commission has outside roles also related to veterinary practice or industry or what have you. Everyone will want to be mindful of not finding themselves on both sides of the equation, right? I take very earnestly and appreciate you putting your status out there so that it's out in the open. And I'm sure that everyone else on the commission may have other things that could cross commission business. No one on the commission wants to be in a position to make a decision for the commission that would also benefit an organization that they are part of, right? So when that comes up, we need to identify it as a conflict of interest. We need to take certain steps in order to insulate people who may have a conflict from being on both sides of an equation. So the legal office is going to flesh out sort of mini training modules going forward for all of the boards and commissions that are attached to the department to discuss things of what we call brass tacks that all the commissions and boards have in common. What is a conflict of interest? What do we do when there's a conflict of interest? What is a public record? What are public meetings laws? Those sorts of things. But until we get those training modules propped up, I just wanted to put it out there that everyone will want to be mindful of, like I said, not being on both sides of the equation. And if there's ever a question, I hope that anyone would feel comfortable to pick up the phone and call me, and we can talk through whatever those might be. Lastly, I noticed the letter for last year's report, the 4 points, and this has come up with other boards and commissions. There's no doubt that the public meetings law that we have puts a certain burden on members of any commission for the state to have to travel and have physical quorums and that sort of thing. And you all have an annual reporting requirement. And it's not necessarily practical for you to do the sort of nuts and bolts of drafting and analysis of the information that goes into the report that you're probably going to put up by February 1 of next year. I did want to submit to the commission an available tool to work around that might be to prop up a working group of this commission to work on the report that is coming due, and then reporting back to this full commission for analysis and approval and that sort of thing. But that way you don't have to have an open public meeting to flesh out every in detail of what the report will be, given the burden and the constraints of conducting public meetings. So the caveat with that is whatever recommendations or work product were put forward by the working group have to be diligently, deliberated, debated, whatever, in the open meeting, but that you don't have to be writing the report literally in the open meeting in order to get it done. I don't know if that's helpful, but I did want to put that out there for the commission's consideration if they would like to consider such an action. Thank you, sir.
That's very helpful, Mr. Miller. Thank you so much for that. That's very helpful. Don't want any conflicts of interest. We want to do our calling properly, and thank you for the reminder. Any comments or thoughts?
Just a clarification. So, Mr. Miller, if we're just all there as individuals, I mean, obviously we are secondarily part of the Equine Commission, but if we're there at a meeting or anything like that as individuals, and we're not discussing business to the Equine Commission, but just topics related to things the Equine Commission is discussing, that would be considered acceptable?
Correct. So if 4 of you showed up to whatever conference and you're just gathering feedback and you come back to the next full meeting of this commission and everyone has an opportunity to kind of rehash what those comments are and what they mean and what this commission wants to do about it, that is completely fine. What you don't want to have happen is for 2 or more of this members of this commission to show up at that conference, for there to be some conversation at the water cooler, so to speak, about, I don't know, everyone in the state needs a red barn. And then suddenly at the next commission meeting, there's not really any discussion, but the commission just magically decides to put it in their report that they recommend the legislature pass a law that everyone have a red barn. And there not having been any sort of deliberation or discussion or whatever, they would be looking back at that conference and say, well, that was actually the meeting where people talked about it and deliberated it, and that wasn't a public meeting. So that's what you're looking to avoid.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Miller. Any other comments or thoughts? Well, in closing, I want to say thank you to everybody for being here. I know it's taking time out of your day. This is really important work we're doing, and I feel good about personally what we've done so far, and hopefully we're going to be able to make a difference for the horse in the state of Tennessee. Any closing comments? Is there any public comments? So the people that are here make any public comments?
The only thing I would ask is that if there's other dates like that February 1st or things that we need reports by, if I could get those so we know that we are meeting it, if not before the deadline, so that you guys have that information, and whether that's public or just kept within the state government, so I know we prep it appropriately. Not that we're hiding anything, but just so that way we get stuff out and published if we need to publish it before it gets.
That's the only solid date that this commission has to hit.
Okay, it's February 1st, okay.
And in that report, if the information is not ready to go, we can state where it is in the process, and that we're helping to review it. I mean, which is the truth, right? I mean, that's what we're doing. We're here to help review and position this information for the success of everybody involved.
And it may be helpful then, even if it's just a Zoom meeting with the commission, that we can review aspects of the way that data is being represented to make sure that we don't have anything additional. That
I think a working group, we'll call a working group for that. So thank you. For our next meeting in the next probably 6 to 8 weeks will be a working group to do that, and then we'll try to have another meeting to agree upon what we want to put in our letter and from that working group.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Dr. McInturf, I apologize for interrupting.
Yeah,
The commission's interested in setting up a working group that's going to do work before the next meeting. Now would be the time to form that working group, to assign members to it, to lay out exactly what the scope of work is and what the expectations are for that group to report back to this full commission before you leave and need that before your next meeting.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Miller.
Do we need a motion for that, Mr. Miller, or?
I would discuss, I would make a motion, again, specific as to who's on the working group, what the expectations are, and when the report date is. And then you need a motion in a second, yes.
Someone like to make a motion?
Sure, I can make a motion that we develop a working group to help assess and compile data from the economic impact survey, the letter to the governor, and other reports in alignment with those two missions.
Second. Get a second, John? Okay, who would like to be on that working group that's gonna bring this information back to our committee?
Based on my role, I am happy to serve. This is Jenny Ivy.
I too would like to be in that group.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Everyone else would like to participate?
I'm happy to help from a perspective of a consumer of many of those things.
Sure.
So,
The great thing about working groups is that they are allowed to be virtual, so.
Okay,
Mr. Miller, I have a question. Can we add people not on this commission to a working group, or does it have to stay within this group?
If the commission desires to do that, they can add non-members to the working group.
Okay.
we can,
Again,
yes.
someone from the working group needs to report back to this commission the work product, the recommendations, whatever it is, so that this commission has the final flesh it out, just deliberate it, decide it, not just rubber stamp it.
So based upon that and the nature of this project, Dr. David Hughes, Mr. Jamie Menard, and my grad student Olivia Watson will also be aiding in developing those reports within the working group.
Either one of the Matts want to be a part of that group?
I'll do it.
Matt Smith? What would like to
Count me
also
in.
be a part?
Whatever's needed, so I'm happy to help.
Certainly don't need the entire commission.
No, we don't. And like I said, if it'd be best for me not to be a part of that, I mean, that's fine as well. I could step back from it.
So I do think, at least from my perspective, because I'm not a veterinarian and Dr. Hughes is an economist, so at least having someone from a clinical perspective to look at some of the veterinary data that we have would be helpful. Formally or
Dr. Adair, do you
informally,
want
it's
to
fine.
represent?
I can.
Yeah, let's let Dr. I'll step back from that. I'll let Dr. Adair be a part of that. As commission chair, I'll step back and look at your report. So,
Jeannie, you probably need to chair.
will you chair that working group,
Certainly.
please?
Since
Sure.
it's gonna be primary.
Dr. Ivy, perfect. Okay, this is great. What other business do we have? We need to, I guess we need to vote,
Vote,
right? Let's
right.
take a vote. Let's take a roll call vote on the motion.
Are we gonna
Okay.
tack those individuals onto the motion? On a discussion, because we have to make a motion for the members too. So I'd say
We can amend the motion.
amend the motion to include the
Other members?
other members that were presented.
Okay.
I think that's, so Matt Smith, Jeannie Ivy, Steve Adair, plus John.
And then David Hughes, Jamie Menard, and Olivia Watson.
Perfect.
Need a second.
second.
Yeah, John, second.
All right. Dr. Adair,
Aye.
John Elder,
Aye.
Dr. McInturf,
Aye.
Dr. Beatty,
Aye.
Matt Smith, aye. Mr. Horseman,
Aye.
Dr. Ivy,
Aye.
looks like the ayes have it. Dr. Ivy, could you give me those names again? David Hughes, Olivia Watson, and
Jamie.
Menard?
Yes, Mr. Menard, Jamey and Menard.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Awesome. So it's now 12:25 Eastern. We hope to wrap up by 12:30 Eastern. Any additional comments from, I know we've got some guests, or any public comments that need to be made by our guests? Okay, any additional comments from the commission? Can I get a motion to adjourn? Dr. Dare? Dr. Beatty, second. And I'm just gonna have by voice, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Have a great day.
Thank you very much.